Hello and welcome to Football League World TV. My name is Ned Holmes and this is the EFL debate show where every week we discuss a question regarding the EFL. This week we've got Football League representatives from the North and the South as Toby Wilding and Chris Thorpe are joining me to debate who the 5 most exciting youngsters in the Championship are. We're going to be talking about players with plenty of talent today then. Of course, we want to hear your thoughts though, so make sure you comment below to let us know who you think deserves a place among the finest young players in the second tier and whether some of our selections don't link up with your thoughts. Before we get stuck into it, I want to remind you to like and subscribe Football League World TV on YouTube if you haven't already, because it really does make a big impact for us. And without further ado then, we'll get stuck in first. We'll be in the nation's capital. As I say, we start in the nation's capital with a player that I believe was a section of both of you, and that's Fabio Carvalho. So the teenage attacking midfielder has made a stunning start to the season, really. 3 goals and an assist in his first 5 appearances, but he was a mainstay, really, in Marco Silva's side before picking up injury. Toby, we'll start with you first. Why is he among sort of your 5 most exciting players in the division?
He just makes things happen. I mean, like you say, 3 goals, 1 assist already in his 5 league games for Fulham. I think what's worth noting as well is he sort of actually burst onto the scene the back end of last year when Fulham were still a Premier League club, and even then when they were sort of, sliding quite rapidly towards relegation, he was still able to impress. I mean, he was on the score sheet for them at Southampton. So, I mean, he looks like a player who could already play in the Premier League quite regularly. To Fulham's benefit, they've managed to sort of keep him around for this season in the Championship, and he's clearly making an impact there. And I think you sort of see that as well with sort of the not a huge dip, but Fulham have dropped off slightly in the games in the past few weeks where Carvalho hasn't been able to play due to injury. So I think that really sort of shows how important he is, even at 19 years old, to a side who really should and will push for promotion back to the Premier League this season.
And coming to you then, Chris, obviously Fulham are a side with an embarrassment of riches when it comes to sort of attacking talent this season. What is it that Fabio Carvalho brings that excites you so much about him?
He's just a sort of quite a diminutive player. Obviously, he's more a playmaker, an attacking midfielder, a number 10, whatever way you want to say it. But I think at the same time, he's more a shadow striker. And it's something that you're starting to see a lot more in football nowadays, where you have that player that sort of has a free role, who can drift wide, who can go up alongside, Mitrovic as sort of like a front 2 in a way. And I think he really thrives off just being given the responsibility to just do whatever he likes in the final third. He's not got a specific role. Obviously, he's going to start centrally, but he's quite unpredictable. You can't exactly pick him up and sort of put a cover over him, as it were, if you're an opposing defender. And I think that's something that really helps his game. And obviously, he's getting into these positions and, he's reaping the rewards of his movement by scoring the goals that he has. Obviously there's also the subject of him potentially signing a new contract or potentially moving on. I think you only have to look at the clubs that have been linked with him to know just how talented this lad is. And I really think we could see him having the same sort of impact as, Ryan Sessegnon had a few years back.
Absolutely. As Chris said, Toby, there's been a fair bit of talk about his future. How important for you is it that Fulham try and keep hold of him sort of I guess this season, but also, over the next few years?
Yeah, it is really important. I mean, I think this season, obviously, we've already sort of said about how big a player he has been at the start of the season for them in the battle for promotion. And then looking at what he could do in the Premier League already last season, you think if Fulham are going to go up, then to be able to draw on that from him again next season could really help them, because obviously he only sort of came into the side the back end of last season when it was pretty much already certain that they would be going down. So I think if you get him sort of making that impact across the course of a whole campaign, when he's then had that year playing regularly in the Championship to develop his game even more from what we were seeing last season, he could be a really important player for them next season. So it's sort of, if they do go up, key for them to keep hold of him. And the other thing you perhaps think about this contract situation is if they are to lose him, then surely they've at least got to get him on a deal where they can get some sort of fee for him, because that would be a massive loss to lose a player of his quality for free.
Absolutely. We'll stay with you, Toby, for our next pick. And this is a player you've seen a lot of, Toby, over the past year or so, but he's one that you've both been impressed with. So it's a Blackburn Rovers forward. Who makes the list for you?
Yeah, for me, I went for Tyree Stolen here. I think he's been absolutely sensational since he arrived at Rovers sort of last summer, joining on a free from Preston. That's obviously something that Rovers fans will always have a wry smile over. But anyway, it's been a rapid rise for him. I mean, he turned up and he was still only 18 last summer when he arrived, and it just looks as though it was going to be an under-23s player, one for the future. But then he was so good in pre-season, he was immediately fast-tracked into the first team, and you just can't not pick him at the minute, the way he's playing. I mean, he's been brilliant at the start of this season. He's so versatile as well. We've seen him play wide, we've seen him play central. I mean, you look at the size of him, you wouldn't really think he's the sort who'd fit a centre-forward role, especially when you've got Sam Gallagher and Ben Brereton, two much taller, more physical players on either side of him. But his work rate and the pressure he can put on a defence or a goalkeeper, as we saw when he won the penalty against Swansea in the opening day of the season, means that he can just make that position work. So, I mean, and then with the ball at his feet as well, the sort of the tricks and flicks and his pace he comes off with, you're never quite sure what he might do next, but you always know it's going to be something that's entertaining to watch. So he's a player you could just watch and watch and watch, and luckily I get to do that quite a lot.
And Chris, switching over to you then, what's impressed you so much about Dolan? And do you think, as Toby was saying there, we've seen him play in a sort of more central role already. Do you think he's one of the players that's really set to benefit from the departure of Adam Armstrong?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a good amount of players that sort of stepped out of the shadows, if you like, since Armstrong went to Southampton. I think with Dolan, as Toby quite rightly mentions, his tricks and his flicks are exactly what makes him so exciting. I think there's a habit nowadays in coaching in particular to sort of coach players to do less sort of tricks and stuff like that and sort of focus on the basics. But he sort of thinks outside the box, and that's what makes him so eye-catching and so enjoyable to watch. And just going back to the sort of tactical perspective of, having Gallagher and Brereton Diaz playing in the sort of wide roles, I think that really helps him, actually. I think it gives Dolan the space to sort of express himself in that central role, because obviously the opposing fullbacks and opposing centre-backs are more focused on these two massive target men playing in wide areas, which is obviously a very unique sort of tactic that Mowbray's employed at Blackburn. So, yeah, I really think it helps Dolan, and the fact that he can play in numerous positions is only going to be beneficial to him in his career.
Absolutely. And Toby, obviously it's early on in his career, as we've said, but for you, as someone that is watching sort of Blackburn week in, week out, how many goals do you think Dolan should be targeting this year? Or is it not really about that at the moment? It's just about seeing him continue to develop and impact games?
I think there will be a bit more of an emphasis, obviously, with the departure of Adam Armstrong on Dolan to get a few more goals this season. I think that's going to be the same for any Blackburn player, given they didn't actually bring in another centre-forward when Armstrong left during the summer. So I do think there will be a requirement on him to get more goals, but it won't just be the goals, it'll be his all-round contribution, I think, is what Mowbray likes to perhaps see more from players. I think you look at his assist for Brereton on Saturday, the quality of that cross was absolutely outstanding. But yeah, in terms of goals, I mean, he's got 3 in all competitions already this season, which is sort of that equals what he had last season. So you would expect him to be pushing on from that. I think he himself, he's one of them players that you can see he's always keen to improve and keen to make a mark. So I definitely think he'll be targeting, perhaps, maybe if we're on 3 already, maybe looking to get around double figures this season. And if he can do that, then the move Blackburn made in getting him to extend his contract within a few months of him signing is going to be a really smart decision, because he's a player I really think could start to attract interest in the next year or so. So that new deal will be really important for Rovers.
Absolutely. Well, so far we've had Fabio Carvalho and Tyree Stolen, two players that you both picked. But now we're going to go through to a few where I guess your stance differs a bit. So we're heading from Lancashire across to Yorkshire and Bramall Lane, where I believe you both opted for different members of the Sheffield United squad. Toby, who have you gone for? Why are they among the sort of most exciting players in the Championship in your eyes?
Yeah, so at Sheffield United, I've gone for Morgan Gibbs-White. I think you just look at the impact he's had since he came in at Sheffield United. It's been huge to the turnaround they've sort of had over the past, since the September international break, really, when he arrived, that they were sort of not back. You can't be banging trouble at this stage of the season, but they were bang out of form for what many would have expected of that side, having just come down. But they've sort of really stepped up now since the start of the month. And Gibbs-White, 2 goals, 2 assists in his 4 games for Sheffield United already. I mean, that just shows the sort of impact he's had on that turnaround. And I think you look at the quality of him. I mean, he had a brief chance at Swansea last season before injury, and then the recall by Wolves sort of put pay to that. And to be honest, I was surprised to sort of see him in the Championship, because I always thought when I'd seen him for Wolves in the Premier League, he more than held his own at that level. So I think he was perhaps more a victim of circumstance with some of the other players they had, that he ended up out on loan in the Championship in the first place to give him that game time. So I think the fact that we're now seeing him for a second time in the Championship, where hopefully he will get the full season to impress as a Premier League quality player in the Championship, could be a really exciting prospect to watch.
Absolutely. And Chris, first of all, then what do you make of that selection from Toby?
Yeah, no, I find it hard to disagree with Tobes. Obviously, I've picked another player from Blades who I'll come on to later. But Gibbs-White, what surprised me the most about him is he's been playing sort of more in a wider role. Whereas when I've watched him for Wolves, he's been either a number 10 or even a number 8 in the midfield. So it's interesting that he's got that sort of edge to his game, and he's got a bit of pace about him. And I think that really helps him in that wide role. And he's obviously thriving under Jokanovic, who obviously has a good track record of giving young players opportunities. So, yeah, no, long may it continue for Sheffield United's sake. And I reckon a lot of people at Swansea would be, kicking themselves a bit and thinking, it could have been us if he had stayed fit.
Absolutely. But you've gone for a slightly different member of the Blades squad, another 21-year-old, I believe. Who is it, and why is he among your sort of most exciting players?
Yeah, I've gone for Iliman Ndiaye, obviously a young Frenchman that came into Sheffield United from the sort of talent hotbed, which is Boreham Wood in Non-League. Obviously, Sorba Thomas, another notable player who's gone on to do great things for Huddersfield Town, coming from their sort of youth sector / first team, if you like. Same sort of player as Carvalho, I'd say, like sort of a shadow striker again, attacking midfielder. Obviously got a couple of goals to his name already, but I was also impressed with his link-up play that he's had with Morgan Gibbs-White, particularly in that 6-2 win over Peterborough United. Really impressive. Obviously, Blades have handed him a 3-year deal, so they obviously see him as a great prospect for the future, which is, again, can only mean great things for them moving forwards, with the likes of Daniel Jabinson, obviously on loan at Burton Albion right now, but for him to come back, and then you've also got Ndiaye, you've got 2 really bright prospects for their future, hopefully in the Premier League if they gain promotion back this season. So another really exciting young player that sort of plays in that hole just behind the striker, and been so impressive his start, to be honest.
Absolutely, and I'm just going to take this point to look at a sort of a comment we've had in from Glenn Watkin, who's a Coventry fan, and he's brought up 3 sort of really exciting players at Coventry: Gakures, Matson, and O'Hare. Toby, any of those 3 worth a shout in your eyes? I don't think any of them feature on your list, but have you been impressed by them?
Yeah, I mean, Gakures, absolutely. I mean, the thing that sort of put me off Gakures, to be honest, is sort of at 23, I sort of thought, is he still a young player? Perhaps he's sort of getting to that age where he's a bit more established, maybe not quite in that bracket. O'Hare, similar again, 23. But those two are two really quality players. And maybe if they were a couple of years younger, then they probably would have pushed for my list, to be honest. Maatsen, he's one that you could argue for. I mean, definitely coming through on loan from Chelsea, you've got to be a good player to be on the books at Stamford Bridge. So yeah, he is a player who definitely did come into my consideration. I just sort of in the end decided to go with a few others who perhaps maybe the routes they'd taken I found more interesting. We might come on to that with a couple of the others I'm going to touch on in a second.
Absolutely. And Chris, do you sort of echo what Toby said there?
Yeah, no, with Gyökeres and O'Hare, I think they're far too established to make my list. So sorry about that, Glenn. But with Maatsen, definitely deserves a mention. I saw quite a bit of him when he was at Charlton on loan. I think it was last season. So yeah, no, it's good to see him thriving in the Championship with Coventry, and it's really thriving in that left wing back role, if you like, under Mark Robins. And yeah, all credit to the Sky Blues. Their start to the season has been remarkable and surprised a lot of people.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for that commenting, Glenn, and please do get your comments in, because we want to hear your suggestions and we want to hear your sort of arguments with anything that Chris and Toby have said, really. But for now, we'll move on to our next selections. As you said there, Chris, the loan signing of Gibbs White, a shrewd one for Sheffield United, but you've got different loanee among your selections as well, haven't you?
Yeah, Tahith Chong from Birmingham City really caught my eye during these first sort of month or so of the season, obviously coming in on loan from Manchester United. He's got a point to prove. He's been at Man United for a good few years since moving there from Feyenoord. So this is a real chance for him to sort of put a marker down and sort of show Ole Gunnar Solskjaer that he's worth a new contract at Old Trafford. I'm pretty sure he's in his final year now. And again, he's sort of playing in this free role. Came in as more of a right winger who likes to cut inside onto his stronger left foot, but he sometimes plays the number 10 while he's been at St Andrews. So it's going to be interesting to see if he can keep up this sort of influence that he's had on the team. Obviously, a lot of responsibility for someone so young, but he's already sort of taken it in his stride, and he looks like a player who could, prove all the difference in potentially Birmingham being a dark horse for the playoffs. I know they haven't been as consistent as they would have liked so far, but if he can continue to sort of drive them on, then I think they might have a real chance with him in the team.
Absolutely. Toby, going over to you then, Chong has I guess been a real catalyst, often at the heart of sort of their attacking moves. Just how impressed have you been with him this season?
Yeah, I've been really impressed with him as well. I mean, I think Birmingham made a lot of good signings this summer, and he was definitely a standout one for them to bring him in. I mean, I think sort of playing in that sort of attacking midfield role, perhaps he can really make things happen for them, and I think he will. I think you look at some of the players he's got playing ahead of him who can offer supply to the likes of Deeney, Jutkovic, Anike, Hogan. There's some really sort of big target men up there that he can either sort of move in and play off to sort of create chances for himself, or if he wants to sort of perhaps spread it out or play the passes through. There's a lot of different routes that he can sort of go down there to really show his quality this season. So I think it looks a good move for him with a Birmingham team who should be a bit more resurgent and a bit more competitive after a pretty disappointing campaign. So it's a really good opportunity for him to show the quality that he has, I think.
Absolutely. And I guess on the topic of Man United, the Red Devils will be linked with your next selection, Toby, that if reports are to be believed, that they'll face some sort of stern competition from Tottenham. He's the only defensive player that the two of you picked today. But what's impressed you so much about him, and why is he such an exciting talent?
Yeah, this is Ronnie Edwards at Peterborough, who I've gone for. And like you say, that those sort of links really interest me, and quite quite exciting. When you think where he's come from last season, he was still only playing at Barnet in the National League, and then Peterborough sort of snapped him up, and he's all of a sudden he's made himself a sort of mainstay at the heart of their defence. He started the last 3 games for them, and yes, it's not always been the best sort of results for them, but to be sort of playing at that level at the age of 18, given where he's come from, and to now being linked with those quality of teams, it's just a fantastic rise, and it's one of them. Sort of going back to what I was saying before with the sort of routes that come down, it's one of them that sort of interests me in terms of the development of a player, where he's come from, where he's going. He seems as though he could go all the way, so definitely one to keep an eye on. And I mean, you look at him there, the sort of the physicality of him at 18 already. It's a really huge asset for Peterborough to have that sort of presence. He's clearly playing with confidence, enjoying what he's doing at the minute. So he's definitely one for me to keep an eye on.
Absolutely. And I believe Gabriel Zakuani, the former Posh centre-back, described him as the best ball-playing centre-back in England. That's probably a bit strong, Chris. But, you know, is that side of his game in an era where the modern centre-back, to use a cliche, is expected to be so comfortable on the ball? Has that side of his game impressed you?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think people just naturally expect it of centre-backs nowadays to be good in the ball. And when one isn't, they usually get criticised. And to be honest, rightly so. I think the way the game's going now, you need to be able to be as good on the ball as some of your midfielders and some of your other teammates that play in more forward areas. So, yeah, definitely that's an area of his game that will help him to go further in his career. And I think he's at the right club as well. Peterborough have got such a strong track record for picking up these gems from non-league and then selling them on for a profit. So, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if, a Man United or maybe even a Chelsea or another Premier League club of that ilk sort of snap him up further down the line. So, yeah, no, his ball-playing ability will only help him go far for sure.
Absolutely. So as we close in on sort of our final selections, please remember to get your comments in because we really do want to hear who you guys think are among the most exciting young players in the Championship. So we've gone through 4 selections from each of you so far with Fabio Carvalho, Terry Stolen, Iliman Ndiaye, Morgan Gibbs-White, Tahith Chong and Ronnie Edwards all named. But Chris, come to you first. Who's your final selection today?
Yeah, Brennan Johnson. I couldn't overlook him for this. To be honest, I've been so impressed with him since as far back as last season. Obviously, the loan spell at Lincoln, everyone knows he was an absolute star for them, and obviously so unlucky not to get a promotion on the CV. Obviously, losing to Blackpool eventually at Wembley, but yeah, it's just the impact that he's had playing in a sort of a free role, more sort of as a right forward at Forest, but before at Lincoln he was more of a number 10, and I just love the fact that he can just pick the ball up and just drive at opposition defences. Like, he's got no fear, and to have the likes of David Beckham singing your praises at that age means you're something pretty special. And yeah, to be honest, I'm pretty surprised that there wasn't more interest in him during the summer. I know obviously there was the bids and talk of Brentford, potentially being in for him, and I don't think that speculation is going to go away. The longer that he stays at Forest and the more consistent his performance is, the more likely I think it is he's going to end up in the Premier League one way or another. So yeah, no, for me, he's the best young player in the Championship. I go as far to say that. Just because of how highly rated he is at Forest and how big a role he's already got there in obviously what's been a disappointing start for them all round. So yeah, no, he's definitely top of my list.
Absolutely. Well, big words from you there, Chris. Toby, Brennan Johnson, obviously Chris's top pick, as it were. He is now looks to gain from having a coach like Steve Cooper at the City ground. A player with real proven quality in terms of bringing young players through. I think Jadon Sancho, Phil Foden, to name a few who he's helped. How important do you think that could be for his development?
Yeah, that could be massive. I mean, you look at what he's doing already. He's already an excellent player. He's made all sorts of decent impressions for all sorts of reasons. And so he's, as Chris was saying there, he's already sort of well on the right track to, being a Premier League player probably sooner rather than later, you would imagine. But that experience, as you say, with Steve Cooper now coming in, he knows how to work with those sorts of players. He knows how to get the best out of him. So given the foundation that Cooper has got to build on with Johnson, that is an exciting prospect to see just what he can get out of him. And I think Johnson will be relishing that chance to play with a manager who's got such a good track record of sort of developing young players. And if he does get that right with Johnson as well, then he could be absolutely key to sort of Forest, as you would perhaps expect, to pull away from the relegation zone in the rest of the season.
Absolutely, and well, we'll go to you for your final pick now, Toby, which is one which might surprise a few, I guess.
Yeah, I have put my neck on the line a little bit here, but I just think the sort of the route that he's come down was something that really sort of intrigued me in the direction he seems to be going, and that's this is Alex Scott at Bristol City, and who they only brought in last season. He arrived from Guernsey in the Isthmian League. Of all the leagues, the one that you can never quite pronounce, but there you go. So yeah, for him to have gone from there to now be sort of already making an impact in the Championship for Bristol City. I mean, 5 starts this season, and I think it was only last month they got him tied down to a new contract until the summer of 2025. I think he made talk of sort of Premier League interest. So that shows you how highly he's already rated at Ashton Gate, that they're wanting him on that sort of contract so early in his career after what, just a handful of appearances. So he's got massive potential. I mean, you look at his performances already this season, the confidence he plays with. He's not afraid to take on defenders and look to make things happen, and that could be really useful. And with that in mind, the contract Bristol City have got him tied down to means he could be a huge player for them going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's some at Ashton Gate calling him the Guernsey Grealish. I think probably more down to the amount of fouls he wins and how low he wears his shin pads than his performances so far. But yeah, I think he's definitely dealt with the physical side of the game as well as I've seen sort of an 18-year-old deal with it in that attacking midfield role. Chris, we've seen young players come through at Bristol City in the past, the likes of Bobby Reid, Joe Bryan. Alex Scott, he's maybe not one of their own, as it were, but a young player there that City fans should be excited about. Yeah,
absolutely. I said to you guys off air that I think he's the type of player that Bristol City need right now. Someone who can do something, a bit more outside the box and something unexpected in a game that can change a draw into a win, that kind of thing. And again, he's one of these number 10s that a lot of people are excited about. I think in England we're blessed with quite a lot of sort of number 10 sort of players in that mould. Sort of Grealish, Maddison, Mason Mount, you name them. There's plenty of players that he can follow in the footsteps of, and he's already making an impact and already getting linked with these big clubs, and obviously signing that new contract is massive for the Robins. So yeah, it's definitely one to get excited about. Maybe not at the level of Bobby Reid and Joe Bryan just yet, but if he can continue to be given regular minutes under Pearson, then there's no reason why he can't get to that level eventually. So yeah, it's brilliant from Bristol City's perspective for sure. Absolutely.
So Alex Scott caps up your guys' selections alongside Brennan Johnson, Ronnie Edwards, Heath Chong, Iliman Ndiaye, Morgan Gibbs-White, Tyrese Dolan, and Fabio Carvalho. Before we move on to a few of the best of the rest, as it were, just one more outcry really for your guys' comments if you're watching to let us know who you think is among the most exciting players in the Championship. We've had your 2 selection. As I said before we go, I just thought it would be important to touch on a couple of the names that were the best of the rest, as it were. The likes of Jaden Anthony, Hanno Masengo, Morgan Rogers, James Garner, Jason Knight, and Tyrese Campbell all missed out. Chris, were any of those close for you?
Jaden Anthony, definitely. I covered Bournemouth versus Blackpool earlier in the season, and he was like constant threat. Didn't look out of place alongside, your David Brooks, your Dominic Solankis in that front three. You would have thought that Jayden Anthony had played as many games as those two have, and really thriving under Scott Parker. And fair play to Parker, to be fair. He could have gone into Bournemouth and spent heavily. Obviously, they've got the finances to do so, but he's put faith in this young winger, and he's really thriving. And alongside another of his teammates who's similar age, Zamora at left back, they've got a great combination going on. You'd think they'd have been playing for years at senior level. I'm sure they have at youth level. So, really exciting times for the Cherries with those two in the side.
And what about you, Toby? Any of those names we mentioned, sort of the best of the rest, or is there anyone else that stood out that sort of just missed out on your list?
Yeah, I could agree with all them. One of the one that I did consider perhaps a bit of a left field one, maybe considering their form, but one that I sort of thought about going with was Ruben Colwill at Cardiff. Another one who's just sort of slowly starting to break into the team there. Sort of made that big impact with his brace against Forest to sort of help Cardiff come from behind to win there. He's already sort of playing senior international level for Wales, 3 caps there, still only 19. So he's another one who I thought could be well worth keeping an eye on going forward.
Absolutely. Well, thanks a lot, lads. Thanks for sort of serving me up with your most exciting players in the Championship. That's it for us for the EFL debate show for this week. But Football League World TV has got some great stuff to come today. We've got the Reading Club takeover at 2 p.m. and then a little bit later we've got the Tuesday EFL preview. So a whole host of stuff to sink your teeth into. But as I say, thanks lads, and thanks for watching.